Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful Wednesday edition of the On Air Advocate Facebook Live. We're at the On Air Advocate. We provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those who don't know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I'm the producer and the host of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited that you have joined us here this afternoon. Please make sure that you hit and give some love and share this broadcast, as well as drop below where you're viewing from. We would just love it. Well, at the On Air Advocate, you know that each and every week we pick a weekly focus. And I have to say this might be my favorite weekly focus because this is the way that I live my entire life. And that is through the power of faith, hope, and belief through all things. Everything that I do, if you've known me my whole entire life, from my early upbringing of having some trials and tribulations as a child, to being a single mom of 4, as well as having a son with chronic medical conditions as well as disabilities. At every single moment of the day and night, I believe that with God, we can do all things, and with strong faith. And so at this time, I could think of no other better faith warrior, I guess I would say, than my dear friend, Kimberly Krueger. She is amazing. That's how I want to say that to start out with. That's why we started 5 minutes late, because we started talking. That's what happens. She is a wife. She is a mother of 12. So if that doesn't make you stop and watch this, I don't know what will. I bet you all the time in your life people do that.
Yeah,
Mother
it's
of
a
12.
Showstopper.
Grandmother of 5. She is a passionate third-generation entrepreneur. She is an author, a publisher, a speaker, a lover of Jesus, and a firm believer that that faith and fear cannot coincide together. And so that is why she is here today to share her journeys, her stories of trials, tribulations, and triumph. Welcome.
Tammy. I love it. Thank you. I should do your show more often. Give me a little lift. It's always good to hear good things. Everybody needs encouragement, right?
Well, you are amazing. And I feel like you also, as well as me, live your life entirely through fearless faith. You have had so many trials and tribulations also come your way in your life. And you definitely guide that on your journey of bringing God, faith, and belief and hope with you. And so I could think of nobody else on the books that come to mind. You are always first.
Oh, that is such a compliment. Thank you. Thank you so much. And, you know, I love that we talk about fearless faith, and I'll explain what that means to me. But first, I want to say that doesn't mean I never experience fear. I don't want people to think that a life of faith means that fear is nowhere on the radar. Right. I have had seasons of fearlessness, moments of fearlessness, decisions that I made with no fear. But I think as long as we walk the earth, we're going to have some fear creep around. The goal is to have less and less of that and more of faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that I don't want people to think that if they're afraid, that means they don't have faith. That's not true either, right? Everyone's given a measure of faith, and fear is part of the human condition. I think for me, what fearless faith means is coming down to a choice.
Right.
You feel fear, you have faith. Which one is it going to be? Right?
Right.
And you've had to make that decision so many times, Tammy.
As well as you.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that you see the stair, and you have to have, even though you have that fear and you can't see the staircase, that you have enough faith and belief inside of you to step down. You know what I'm saying? That staircase, even though you don't know how many steps there are and how long it's going to take and how long the storm might be, that you are willing, knowing that you have that faith and that belief within inside of you to still move forward. Because yes, I firmly agree with you. Within everything, you can't deny that there is a fear aspect of it, but it's the moving forward, even though you have that fear.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Joyce Meyer says, do it afraid. You know, if you wait for the fear to go away, if you think courage or faith is the absence of fear, you're going to be waiting around for a long time to make a move.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
I've found with almost all the big fears I've dealt with in my life that the thing that really shut them up, so to speak, was facing them head on and having to do the thing I was afraid to do.
Right.
And man, if I had $1 for every time I was in a situation where I had to do the thing I was afraid to do, I'd be a wealthy woman.
Right. Right.
I think that's training ground for faith. You know, if we really want to be women of faith, then we're going to find ourselves in situations where we have to choose between fear and faith. It's like going to the gym and working out your faith muscle. The weight that you pump is fear. You know, you got to pick it up. And what does the weight do? It actually damages your muscle in order to build it. It's painful. It's not fun. You think you're going to die while you're doing it. You can't do one more rep, you know? I mean, it's unreal how great of a metaphor that is for building our faith muscle. And I'll be honest with you, in my younger years, I recall one particular memory where I was sitting at my desk. I don't know how many of my 12 kids I had then, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know. It's all a blur, Tammy. We were, you know, financially struggling. I was probably in my mid-20s. And I had made a decision to live by faith, even when it pertained to having a big family. I was going to trust God to provide for my family and show us the way and do what he could do, where whatever I could do was very limited. You know, like I'd say, God, I'll do what I can do. You need to do the rest.
Right.
Which is a lot, you know. And but I was doing bills and I was sitting at the desk and I was so afraid that we weren't going to be able to pay the bills that I was trembling. I literally felt physical anxiety and my whole body was full of fear during a season that I was supposedly living by faith. You know, and I shared that story for a lot of reasons. For one thing, people can't imagine me being that scared. I'm like, dude. No, yes, I was. I still deal with fear. It's just I'm getting better at choosing faith sooner, you know, sooner than later. And but I had to really decide in that moment to trust God, and he just never failed me, Tammy, during all those years of raising a large family and staying at home and homeschooling. That was part of my vision and commitment to my family. We did have to live by faith. And there were times that bags of clothing just showed up on our doorstep. I remember one day we drove home and there were stacked crates of brownberry bread on my porch, like the industrial sized crates that the bread truck delivers to the grocery store. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's manna from heaven. And I'm like, how did this get here? You know, so this just pallets of bread and buns and English muffins and like the good brown berry stuff, you know. And we were just so overjoyed. We had more than we needed. We put stuff in the freezer we shared with friends. And a week later, it happened again. And I was like, I have got to get this. I got to stop this guy before he leaves and find out what in the world is happening here. And so I stopped the guy, don't know who he is, didn't recognize him. And I said, why are you doing this? This is so awesome. Thank you. But why are you doing that? Like, how are you? Why are you here at my house? And he said, oh, you know, somebody told us about a family with 11 kids and we have this bread and it's just going to get tossed. So we decided to share it with you. I still have no idea who gave them my name. And this was when I was a single mom. And, you know, we were struggling to make ends meet, and we literally had more men we could eat in a day or even a week. And I just laughed at God because he literally drops bread from heaven when you trust him and when you have faith.
I always say there is a blessing in every storm, and it's just you have to have the perspective and you have to have the mindset and the eyes to see that. And sometimes people are so entrenched within the storm, and sometimes I say it's a typhoon, that it's hard to see the blessing within that. But there is a
Mhm.
lesson and there is a blessing within it. And
Yes.
I don't know that there is one story that I could ever tell. And that's from being a single mom, from even having a child with, medical conditions and disabilities.
Yeah.
Any situation I've ever faced in my life on a business level, personal level, family level, I can say honestly that there has been a lesson and a blessing in every single one. And that is even at the loss of people in my life,
Yes. Amen.
and
Amen to
so
that.
I feel like it is a set of eyes that you look at it through,
Well,
I-
and those early years, not only did I struggle with a lot of fear, but I also had a really negative outlook. People also don't believe that I used to be such a negative Nancy. They're like, "You're so positive," and I'm like, I work at this mindset. I've had to work at a positive mindset because I learned somewhere along the lines in my walk with God that I was ungrateful and I was focused on what I didn't have instead of what I did have. And things changed when my focus changed and I began to be grateful and count my blessings and stop being such a complainer. I was such a complainer. And I remember, really hearing this really powerful message on gratitude and thankfulness. And it was from scripture. And I was deeply convicted. I was like, I am not a thankful person. I'm just not. Like, I forget to thank people when they drop off crates of bread at my house. Like, what is wrong with me? I'm just so
Right.
worried about what I may not have, and so I began to shift a gear and become more thankful. And since then, I've decided at a certain point just to be what I call a good finder. And so if you are a good finder, your eyes are always scanning the horizon for good. Always.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for the good when the tire goes flat. You're looking for the good when the money's not there. You're looking for the good when your kid gets in trouble. You're looking for the good when you don't feel well,
Right.
And I've been in all those situations and I'm like, Lord, where's the good? And sometimes it's just, God is still with me. That's good enough,
Right.
But if you're not looking for the good, it is so easy to get discouraged, lose faith, become afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But, somebody said once that life isn't always good, but God is always good. And so that really stuck with me. Like, life not being good to you does not mean God stops being good to you.
Right.
And so how is he being good to you right now if life isn't? Like, what are the little kisses from heaven? What are those mercies that are new every morning that are in your life right now? You just don't see them.
Right.
I said the other day, as long as you have breath in your lungs when you wake up every day, then it's a day that all things are possible. Breath in your lungs is God being good to you, people. Right?
It is. Amen.
And sometimes all you have is breath in your lungs, but no energy and your body's riddled with pain. I've been there too.
Mm-hmm.
But I've even found the good in that situation because I had practiced being a good finder long enough. And the key word is practice. I did not become a good finder overnight. I still have to practice. Sometimes I tell my husband, I really can't talk about this right now because it's making me like I'm getting negative. And he's like, what? You're getting negative? I'm like, you just don't know how hard I have to work at being positive. Like it's a struggle, just like faith is a struggle. Fear is a struggle. Nobody just like, I'll tell you a little inside family joke. My youngest daughter, my 11th born, I have 12, but I call my stepson my 12th child. He's actually 21. He's not my youngest, but he's my 12th. But my 11th born just was one of these personalities that was always happy, always smiling, always joyful. So by the time she was 3 or 4, our family joke about her was she craps sunshine. And so Ava craps sunshine, that was what we'd say, if everything was going wrong, she'd still be smiling. And I'm like, I was not born crapping sunshine, people, like that was not, I was not born with that gift. But, so I've had to practice, but I wanted to share with you a story, if I can.
Yes.
About a time in my life where I had to choose faith over fear and being positive over being negative and joy over complaining. In 2014, it was October, and my husband and I were on vacation. We vacation in Florida often, and I decided to go for a run. We were on our 8th day of a 10-day trip, and I knew the area really well. And I went out for a run, and as I was crossing the street, I was hit by a car. And in that moment that I saw the car, I knew it was going to hit me. I just knew. And I had like this out of body, but I was not out of my body, but it was like more like I was watching a movie, because
Right.
I heard like this James Earl Jones really monotone narrator's voice in my head. It was like my brain was preparing me, and my mind was speaking James Earl Jones saying, that car is going to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I heard was, that car just hit you and you're on the hood.
Oh.
And the next thing I heard was, now you're in the air. And the next thing the voice said was, now you're on the pavement. And I was laying there on the pavement, and just to show you my actual humanity, that I am a real person, my response to this was, I was ticked. I was so mad, and I was mad at myself. I was like, leave it to me to get hit by a flipping car. And I'll tell you why I was mad, because I was fully conscious, Tammy. And I'm like, only I would be wide awake for this. Like the rest of the world would be unconscious, but no, Kim stays awake. What is with me? You know, I'm like, this would be a lot more fun if I was unconscious. That was what I was thinking. Like,
Right.
How am I awake and having narration go on in my head? And as soon as I had that angry, frustrated thought, I felt, I heard the question, why are you awake? And I was like, oh, because I have no brain damage. Oh, I have no brain damage, no brain injury whatsoever. I don't even, and I didn't even have a concussion.
Oh my
And
God.
that was the moment when I realized, and I felt like this flood of peace come over me.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like just God's presence, and I heard the words, you're in the middle of a miracle. And what's so compelling about that is most people wouldn't think laying on the pavement broken up by a car is a miracle, right? Most people would say, that's not a very miraculous God. He could have just caused you to wait 30 seconds and you wouldn't have gotten hit by the car.
Right.
Well, I understand that logic. And I understand that God could have done that. But I love what Graham Cook says. He says, God allows in his wisdom what he could easily prevent with his power. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a minute. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And, I have a lot of hindsight now. It's 3.5 years later. I understand why I went through that. I get it. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother show that, we could do. But back to my story. So I'm laying there like I'm in the middle of a miracle. I have total peace. I know God is with me. He just spared me from something terrible. He protected my brain. I don't know what's going on in my body yet, but I know something miraculous is happening. And the very next second, I felt the pain. And all the pain just like cut through my entire right leg. And it felt like my leg was broken. I didn't know. 2 people had already hopped out of their cars and called 911. I was already surrounded by pedestrians. It was about 6:45 in the morning on a weekday. And in no time, I was in the ambulance and off to the hospital. Well, long story made short, my pelvis was, my abdomen, as my surgeon called it, was alphabet soup. He said there was so much bone and cartilage floating around. My right leg femur, I was hitting my right leg. Thankfully, it was an older sports car, so it was low to the ground. Hit me in my upper right thigh. My right femur was forced up through my right hip sockets, basically smashing my pelvis. And my right hip and pelvis had to be reconstructed. I had 6 broken ribs, but no spinal cord injury, no head injury, no internal organ damage. Every single staff member I spoke to said, you're a miracle. Your pelvis, your fractured pelvis should have punctured your spleen, ruptured your spleen. Your broken ribs should have punctured at least one of your lungs, if not both of them. And they said, your organs are untouched, your brain is untouched, your spinal cord is untouched. And what's remarkable about that is the county where I was flown to for my treatment has the highest incident of auto versus pedestrian accidents in the country. And so they see this every day. And they said, we don't see your injuries without one or all of the things we just said you don't have. Mm. You should have one or all of them. 2 weeks after I got home, a friend who lives down there forwarded me an article of a woman who got hit by a car. She had a fractured pelvis and she was paralyzed for life. So I know that God was with me. I know that I was in the middle of a miracle. And what happened, Tammy, was just so remarkable. After, surgery and beginning my recovery process, I remember sitting there one day and realizing I had no fear. Like I literally had no fear. My husband and I were in Florida for a very long, I call it the longest vacation ever, and the most expensive. and we didn't know when we were getting home, if he was going to get paid for his time. I'm suddenly not working any of my businesses, didn't know about the money. The kids are all home, like taking care of each other. My adult children had come home to stay with the little ones. People were bringing meals to my children daily, like groceries and just you name it. And I had no fear. I wasn't worried about anything. Mm-hmm. And I remember just going, God, this is a miracle. I should be worrying about everything. I should be saying, when am I going to walk again? I have to go home in a wheelchair.
Right.
When am I going to get my life back? When am I going to work again? How are my kids? How are they going to deal with this? I didn't have any of that. And I heard God whisper back to me, you never have to fear again. And I realized that he offers us this life of faith where we get to decide. Mm-hmm. We get to choose a life of faith over a life of fear. And again, does that mean we'll never have the inkling? No, but what God was trying to say to me is you never have to live afraid again if you don't want to. You can choose a life of faith. And that fearless, I guess, season lasted a long time. And I remember feeling so free, just believing God that he's got my back, Right. And I remember getting home and getting the first bill from the treatment facility. And I'm sure you can relate to this. It was something like $196,000 or so. That's exactly what I did. I burst into laughter.
You're like, seriously?
Right? I'm like, this number is actually humorous. Like, I've never gotten a bill this big in my life, so.
And they just send it to you in one payment. Like they send you one bill that says that.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, sure. Yeah. I'll write you a check right now, And so I remember calling my husband and going, you got to see this, and I'm dying. And he comes over and he's like, I'm not seeing the humor. And I'm like, honey, it's laugh or cry, and I choose laugh,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, again, it just more things to trust God with. And ultimately that faith in that season, in the worst pain of my life, and I gave birth 11 times and that doesn't feel good. We all know that. Right. But I told the nursing staff that I'd rather give birth to all 11 of my babies back to back in one day than have the pain I had. And they all just went, it's that bad? I go, it's that bad. Mm. And so it was definitely the most excruciating pain in my life, lasted way longer than childbirth. And yet in the midst of that, I was so thankful, mm-hmm. And back to this good finding, I just thanked everybody who helped me. I thanked everybody who brought my children food. I thanked everybody who messaged me, emailed me, texted me, Facebooked me. I had all of this love, and all I could see was how much people loved me, cared for me, and were there for me, instead of how much I was suffering. And it made the entire experience, oddly, I have nothing but good memories of that whole time. So thankful for my husband, who was an incredible caretaker. And I made a decision in the hospital. I said, I'm going to run that half marathon that I just ran a month ago. I'm going to run it again next year. And my husband and the doctor said, well, the doctor was in there, and my husband said, honey, he just said it's going to take you a year to fully recover. And I said, I'm going to run that race next year in 11 months. I'm running a half marathon. And my husband's like, I know that look, she's going to run the race. So I did run the race. I ran that race only 4 minutes slower. And I honestly set out to train. It wasn't until April that I began running. I ran the race in September. So I literally went from wheelchair to walker to crutches to walking just as best I could out on the road to running a half-mile increments at a time. Worked my way up to 13.1 and said, everybody, I'm going to cross that finish line whether I run, walk, or crawl. I don't care, but I'm crossing that finish line. I crossed the finish line, bawled my eyes out, Tammy, like ugly cry, embarrassing ugly cry. And it was at Miller Park, so there were thousands of people. We're just like shoulder to shoulder when we, finished. And I attracted a bit of a crowd with my ball session, but it was by far the most powerful finish line I've ever crossed. It was like, I did it. I recovered from this accident. It didn't take anything from me, and I think that's a decision we have to make.
But I mean, I think that it didn't take anything from you, but sometimes it gave you so much.
Yes.
It taught you and gave you so much. I mean, and that is sometimes what I hear from others that have children with critical medical conditions, people who are going through cancer treatment and come out of that, is that, the tragedy, it happens, but you learn and you come out of it so much fuller, so much more aware, with eyes open and a new empathy.
Yes.
Others,
oh
and
my gosh.
Appreciation for life. And I always say, I don't think that until sometimes our lives are traumatically hit with something, and whether that's through family, whether that's through friends or ourselves taking that in, that we really ever develop that level of empathy.
Yes.
And that we can then pass on to others.
Yep. Well, and ironically, 3 years later, in the same month, my son, who was 29 at the time, just last year, got into a horrible car accident.
Yeah, and I saw that car, and
yeah,
God,
I mean,
God was there.
Total miracle. He was in the middle of a miracle. The only thing left of his car was the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he has scars all down his right arm where the metal scathed his skin, Tammy, because the car was ripped in half. And for the rest of his life, I look at his arm and I'm reminded of how close he came to losing his life. Mm-hmm. And but back to your point on empathy, he ended up having to have pelvic surgery and had to have pins put through his pelvis to secure his sacrum because he broke his tailbone. So here, 3 years later, my son's in an accident. He's pelvis surgery. He's in agonizing pain, broken ribs, and some other complications, and neck surgery. And the amount of empathy I understood. And I also remembered how my husband took care of me, how patient he was, how understanding he was. And I was able to then transfer that to my son. I mean, hey, I'm a mother. If the only reason I suffered that accident was to be there for my child 3 years later in that way, then amen.
Right.
Right. I could be there for him in a way that maybe others couldn't, because I'm his mom and because I knew firsthand. And I'm counting that as a blessing. You know what I mean? Like, that is a gift from the Lord.
It is.
So, I just think it's so important what you're saying about what you get from it. I learned so much through that time. I learned about what's possible, and a deep commitment I made during that season was to live my best life, because I felt that I had a second chance. And I knew that to live my best life, I'd have to work really hard on my recovery, on my health, on my relationships, on my family, on my business, that you're not going to live your best life by happenstance, And I was already on that road. We had just founded the Fellowship of Extraordinary Women. And, I was already sharing that message, but the conviction and the commitment to it just skyrocketed after my accident. I thought, I am going to suck the life out of life. I'm going to live every ounce that life can give me, because I almost couldn't. I thought often about how my wheelchair could have been permanent, and thank the Lord, it was temporary, but it very well could have been permanent. And so I felt like the way that I show my gratitude is by fully living and fully running my race with God and embracing my destiny. That's what I can give back.
That's amazing. And that's actually when I met you, is you were in that transition. You were still in crutches, and we were at the first meeting that I went to.
Okay.
You had just come back, and you were still utilizing crutches for that. So it took you a little bit to get up there, and I had not met you before. And I'm like, when she's healed, we need to go to lunch.
Yes, and we did.
and we did. But, with all of the different aspects of your life and the community that you have brought in together with your faith, from the Few Organization for Women to being the publisher of these amazing books, one that just came out, The Miracle Effect, which is amazing with stories, which you can tell us more about as well. I just think in all facets, it just pours off of you onto all of us. And I know that I'm blessed to know you and have you in my network and as a friend, to be able to receive that as well.
Well, I feel that way about you. You are a faith woman, like if you were a superhero, your uniform would say F for faith. You have huge faith, and you are an encourager. And that really attracted me to you because, I love that. I love finding that in people. And I know that the gift of encouragement is one of my gifts as well. And, so thank you for all that you give to your network, to me, to my people that we have, shared friends and acquaintances.
Right.
And, we underestimate how much of that people need. Every now and again, I just do like a big faith post on Facebook, and I cannot believe how many people reach out and say, oh, I needed that so bad.
Right.
And I'm like, gosh, you know what? I forget how much people need to be encouraged, how much they need their faith infused. They need scripture to, renew their minds, because life just can get discouraged.
I think especially, with our network here over at the On Air Advocate, where you have people that are going through chronic medical illness, pain, and caregivers that are caring. I think sometimes we just think about it like, oh my goodness, Lord, you've given me this burden, but it's a beautiful burden because God gave you shoulders. So he gave you shoulders to rest all that burden on and get through. I know there is one of my favorite songs by Yolanda Adams. I don't know if you've ever listened to her before, but she is a gospel singer. And within the song, the song is called "This Battle Is Not Yours, It's the Lord's." And the song, she stops and she leads a segment and she says, if you don't understand anything that's happening to you, just know that the Lord is setting you up to be blessed.
I love that.
It has to work this way. And, it does. You look at your accident that you've had, the things that have happened with your son. When you had your accident, you learned directly how to care for your son, what happened to him years later.
Yeah.
I know that my son had the 2 years before he had his full spinal surgery, with many know was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And a lot of faith in how that was going to play itself out, is that he had another traumatic incident, which for the first time in his life led him in a wheelchair for 3 months.
Oh, man.
He had a traumatic leg incident. And so he came home with a 35-pound cast on his leg. Now, mind you, he's walked since he's been, about 5-6 years old. So I have not dealt with wheelchairs in the house or walkers or any of that. Now, mind you, at the same time, we're planning for this spinal surgery where he is going to be fully incapable of moving himself at all, is going to need full assist. So I'm thinking myself in one light, like, Lord, what is going on? Now you're going to lay this on the shoulders? And come 2 years later, him having that, he came home and I was like, oh my gosh, that couch doesn't work. My bathroom doesn't fit a wheelchair. The bed isn't right. And it led me to know exactly what I needed and how to be prepared for his spinal surgery.
Praise God, Tammy. What a great perspective.
So, through my whole house, from my kitchen to my living room, everything. And it made me have a better action plan. And I am firm on it now that that tragic incident that happened to his leg happened just for that reason. Because God knew I had never been presented with that before. And he's like, well, we're going to give her a little hot mess right now.
Little training, right?
Because he came home, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't get off the couch. You can't get in the bathroom because his cast was too big, so he couldn't sit on the toilet. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't work. No, does it?
Yeah. Back to the drawing board.
Right.
Oh,
so
gosh.
it really led me to that. And so within every aspect, even within those tragic moments, I feel that there is that lesson and that blessing, you know, with that. So now, miracle effect. I love that name. And just so you know, I think I might make a presentation off of that.
Okay, here it is.
Love it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that book? What inspired it, and what contents are inside of there?
Yeah. So Few's first publication was called The Aha Effect. And when it was time for book number 2, I knew this book needed to be about faith. I had different titles that had faith in them, and and then somebody, I don't even recall how this name came about, but somebody said The Miracle Effect. I'm like, yes, because every story in this book is a miracle story. Every story in this book is about faith. You get miracles with faith, right? I mean, just read the Gospels. That's how it worked. And so inside this book, there are 20 miracle stories of just a variety of medical things, relationship things. My accident, I tell that story in the book. There's a miracle story of a friendship in this book. There's one of my favorites is the last story in the book is this precious woman that I know who wrote about her miracle of being transformed because she became a daughter of God. And, how much do we overlook the idea that God takes who we were and he changes us into someone new? That's the greatest and maybe slowest miracle that ever happens, but it's a miracle no less. So this book will encourage you, strengthen you. There are definitely stories in here of people who've had to deal with diseases, diagnoses, afflictions in their body. And how they've dealt with that. And not everybody's miracle was that, God snapped his finger and their problems went away.
Right.
And I think it's important that people know that you can have a miracle in the middle of your situation, just like I did. The pain was there, the wheelchair was there, but I was in the middle of a miracle. And so I think if your readers are looking for some faith, that this book will surely provide some. It's so powerful, and you can find it on Amazon. You just put The Miracle Effect in the search bar, and there she is.
Yeah, and we will drop all those links below this Facebook Live, and then for the YouTube video of this, we'll put that link so people can just click
Thank you
on it for that. So in wrap up for this wonderful Wednesday, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Favorite quote? Favorite thought? I know I'm putting you on the spot right now.
No, that's cool. I love it. I always feel compelled when I wrap up to challenge the listeners in a good way. And what's on my heart today is to challenge the listeners to face that fear, to do it afraid, to choose faith, and to see what happens. To step out on that limb and really pay attention to what happens after that, because I know the reason I'm sitting here today able to talk about this kind of big, crazy faith is because I started just by saying yes one time. Then I said yes a second time, and then a third, then a fourth. And that's exactly how you develop big faith. And so I want to encourage all the listeners, before this week is over, maybe before this day is over, to choose faith over fear. Even if fear grips your body, you know what? Our feelings are dashboard lights. They're not the steering wheel. I want people to remember that. They're dashboard lights, not the steering wheel. You decide where to steer this crazy train. That's what I say.
Right.
And you can choose to take it in the direction of faith. And I'd love to hear from some of your audience and some of the viewers and listeners, if they want to drop down a comment and say, I'm going to believe God for this, or I'm going to have faith about this. I would love to hear that. And then we can all have our faith encouraged.
That is phenomenal. And I can't see right now because I'm trying to not mess things up because, last Sunday with Daylight Savings Time, I messed things up. So if I turn this on, I don't want things to be making noise. Can you see any comments on yours?
Yes. Let me see what I have here.
I think I saw earlier a whole lot of amens.
Oh, good. I am not seeing anything. My phone sometimes doesn't show me the comments. I can always get it on my laptop.
Okay. Well, I know that there were some, but anything that anyone would like to drop below, definitely living up to Kimberly's challenge here for the day. Drop it below and we can keep the conversation going on this Facebook Live. Because you'll check back on here too, and we can.
Oh yeah.
Yes, most definitely. So with that, thank you for almost spending an hour with us this afternoon. I know your schedule is super busy, and so I do appreciate that. And just getting done, I was watching your little journey with all your grandkids that were over. I was like, look at her go with the three ones.
They're so worth it. It's awesome. Being a Nani, my grandma name is Nani. It is the best club. Just wait. You're going to love it. It's unreal. It's awesome.
Wonderful. So with that, thank you all for listening today. If you would like to link up with any of our social media applications, just go to www.onairadvocate.com and you can find our podcast YouTube channel as well as Facebook and everything else that's in social media today. Is right on there. So thank you all very much. God bless. And just remember, everybody, we are all in this for the long run. So slow and steady wins the race. Pace yourself.
Thank you, Tammy. It's been a total treat to be with you today.
Yes, the same. Thanks so much, Kimberly.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.